afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Atherosclerosis. Today, we are truly honored to host Magdalena Daccord, Chief Executive of FH Europe Foundation, the European Patient Network for Familial Hypercholesterolemia. Magdalena joined FH Europe Foundation to help strengthen the European voice of patients with FH and to expand collaboration with patient organizations, clinicians, researchers, and policymakers. Magdalena, thank you very much for joining us today.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
First of all, I would like to introduce my co-host, Dr. Maria Cherska. And I'm Svetlana Stoica. And together we'll be hosting this episode of Atherosclerosis. So first of all, I would like to ask you, Magdalena, you joined FH Europe Foundation as Chief Executive with extensive experience in healthcare, patient advocacy, and international collaboration. What motivated you to take on this role, and what is your vision for FH Europe Foundation?
Thank you. As I said, it's a pleasure to be here and to address your audience. I hope it will be an informative podcast, considering that I guess, to my knowledge, it's the first time you are recording it with a patient organization leader, so a little bit different character to it. I think it might be worth clarifying that when I first joined, it was FH Europe, UK, England and Wales, to be precise, registered charity. But since 2022, we actually moved the charity to the Netherlands, and it is currently registered as a foundation. So now the full name is FH Europe Foundation, but very often people refer to it as FH Europe indeed. If I reflect personally, I think I've always had a strong sense of advocacy, sort of a desire to contribute to something meaningful and to increase impact beyond individual roles. And I don't necessarily felt I had the same opportunity in my previous jobs. What motivated me was the opportunity to help close a very specific gap. You know, in familial hypercholesterolemia, we already have strong science and, as you mentioned in our chat before recording, clear guidelines and a lot of evidence, as well as progressively more effective therapies. And that's partially thanks to the work of the EAS community. At the same time, we still see significant gaps in diagnosis and in care across Europe. But you know what, to be honest, it's not just across Europe, it's really internationally. And since 2023, we have transitioned to FH Europe Foundation, as I've mentioned, reflecting the evolution of the organization and of the community and the world around us. So what started as a smaller network of patient organizations, very often run by volunteers, has now grown into a platform that supports implementation, collaboration, progressively policy engagement, and even research at international level. And I think what is really worth adding is that FH Europe Foundation, despite the name FH and Europe, really deals with familial hyperlipidemias. So that encompasses other lipid disorders. And I think it's very exciting for me as an individual, as a female, to be in this role and really bring my prior experience to evolve the organization and the community. So just to summarize, I think my role and the role of FH Europe is to complement scientific leadership by helping translate some of this knowledge into practice across very different healthcare systems.
What moment or milestone has been most meaningful to you personally all this time, I mean?
It is difficult to point to a single milestone, Svetlana. Why? Because what we are seeing today is really the result of continuous process. Much of this progress builds on the work that was done before my arrival. And over the years, we have continued to build on those foundations. And that's encompassing learning, adapting, and creating the next layer of impact. I think in preparation to this podcast, I was trying to map out one thing, but I would still stick to saying that it's very much an ongoing chain of actions and reactions, but importantly, one that has been strategically guided. And I think, Average Europe is an organization for patients, their families, and for citizens. I think it's extremely important to emphasize to anyone listening that our job is to change the surroundings in terms of early diagnosis and care, minding the fact that most of the people living with either FH, HoFH, elevated Lp(a) or FCS have not yet been properly diagnosed. We're talking about only a fraction of people diagnosed. So there's still a lot to be done. That said, very quickly, I think all those actions have led to a set of very tangible outcomes. So at European level, we have helped, and I'm extremely proud of that, with the development of council conclusions. I appreciate that maybe not all researchers and young fellows will be familiar with that, but it's actually a very powerful political document. And then the creation of the newly launched Safe Hearts Plan. So at least in the European Union, those are very important, very powerful policy documents that put inherited lipids on the map within the cardiovascular health. And very quickly, a few other things that are relevant, I think, is at organizational level, we have grown from 24 patient organizations to a network of more than 40 national patient organizations, not just in Europe, but also in Australia, China, overall Middle East. And I hope there will be a new patient organization coming up from Ukraine. And so with that growth of people, we've invested a lot of time to help amplify the patient voice. We launched programs like the Patient Ambassador Program, which has been key in improving health literacy, but also being able to give people platform to speak up. I think another very important milestone was the establishment of HoFH Awareness Day, and then participation in research projects around pediatric screening, which are co-funded by the European Union. I could go on, but I guess this will not make this Athero talk very engaging, and it will turn into a monologue.
I was going to ask you about the next stages of development for the organization, but you already mentioned quite a few. Is there anything else you would like to add regarding this?
Well, I think as a CEO, I look at those things from a slightly different perspective. It's now we are entering a phase which needs to help us consolidate and scale. So all those important milestones and successes need to be stabilized. We need to, as I said, consolidate. We have strong foundations, a growing network, established strong partnerships like the one with EAS, EASFHSC, and many other societies and partners outside of the medical societies. We need to now really focus on embedding early detection, screening, personalized or maybe person-centered prevention into national health strategies, without forgetting that at the heart of our actions are individuals, patients, their families. So continuous support, education, and advocacy. So we have a tendency to look forward to big milestones. I think we've achieved big milestones. Now we need to ensure that this is really stable, reliable, and we can build on that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and some more questions. We think about it, and as we know, despite being a relatively common genetic condition, familial hypercholesterolemia remains underdiagnosed worldwide. Why FH is still so difficult to identify? How do you think? And what can be done to improve early diagnosis?
It's a $1 million question. Considering that FH by itself, familial hypercholesterolemia, was named by the WHO, the World Health Organization, a public health burden back in 1997, 1998 in the report. So it's over a quarter of a century that we're still dealing with the same challenges and issues. I think personally, when we focus only on FH, and again, I just want to remind that as a community, as a network of patient organizations, we deal with other inherited lipid disorders. But if we just focus on FH, I think the biggest challenge is that we still operate in a very reactive model rather than a preventative one. Overall knowledge among healthcare professionals about the difference of lifestyle-induced high cholesterol versus genetically driven high cholesterol is still very low, very poor. I think overall awareness among lay public is relatively low to really act. And that's why having FH, for example, and commitment to early screening is so important to tackle this issue. That said, nothing can happen consistently without the inclusion of citizens and patients, because there will be very specific behavioral challenges and barriers, as well as opportunities, and psychological ones. So I think we absolutely must recognize that change can only be driven if patients and citizens are part of the solution. And we are open as a medical society, as researchers, as policymakers, to listen and implement learnings from the communities.
Your career has focused strongly on these rare diseases and personalized medicine. And why? What drives your commitment to these areas? Why these rare diseases? Why not other diseases? Why FH?
So help me out. Now, obviously, I need to challenge this publicly. Why would anyone ever consider FH a rare disease? Rare disease is, FH is actually one of the most common genetic conditions and a CVD risk factors. It shocks me that today there are still people who consider FH as a rare disease. And I think this Athero talk offers an opportunity to clarify the fact that FH affects, depending on the country population, between 1 to 250 to 1 in 300 people, and it affects families. It's genetic, it is inherited, so it's never about one person, it's about families. And so there are estimated 34 million people living with that. That's not a rare disease. That said, the fact that it's still poorly detected and the awareness is very low might potentially cause this confusion. I think an important addition to that is the fact that there is a rare form of FH called homozygous FH. And I don't know how much into details I should be going here, considering that we are addressing a very sophisticated community of people studying this area. Nevertheless, in simple terms, if we have two people living with FH, and because it's so poorly diagnosed, very often they don't even realize that their high cholesterol is genetically driven, there is a risk that their offspring might inherit the same genes from both of them, which will be leading to homozygous FH, which indeed is very rare, very serious, very severe, and requires urgent action. And that's why, at least at FH Europe Foundation, we established a dedicated A2FH Awareness Day on May the 4th. Does that clarify a little bit? Does that help? I mean, you've asked me as well about precision medicine and rare diseases in general. I do believe deeply that as human beings, we need to be approached on a more one-to-one level rather than general. And so as those are genetic conditions, precision and personalized prevention has got a better outcome. And we know a lot more about the variants, the genes causing FH, and we can counteract them a lot better. But it should go beyond just genes. I think personalized prevention, personalized medicine goes beyond just therapies and treatments in general, but lifestyle and communities we are part of. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. And how do you think, how important are patient networks and advocacy organizations in improving awareness and access to treatment for FH patients?
I think it's relevant to emphasize for the listeners that we live finally in a world where lived experience matters, where patient's voice matters because it's not only just the right way, but it is proven by research that evidence provided by patients, by caregivers, can help inform better clinical trials, outcomes, and then as a result can lead to development of better therapies, which in result allows us to better, as it's being told, adherence and overall long-term outcomes. With health literacy, with empowerment of patients, the patient movement, advocacy have been recognized as well by different stakeholders like policymakers, regulators, in the space of HTA, so health technology assessment. Patient groups are incredibly important in shaping thoughts, catalyzing some of the ideas, but also bringing it to the level of policymakers and politicians. So they are ultimately the ones who are in need. It is the people living with the conditions who can really speak about something more than, for example, science. And so their presence, their involvement is critical. And ultimately, from an FH Europe perspective, we are a network. Everything we do is for patient organizations, for patients, with patients. To maybe finish off with a sentence that I love the most, it's about preventing the preventable. People living with FH should never become a CVD patient. And the same goes for people living with HoFH or elevated Lp(a) or even FCS. They are just people living with a risk factor. If they had a heart attack or developed CVD, we collectively as a community have failed them. So yeah, collaborating with them is key to help us remind us about preventing the preventable.
Thank you very much. This brings us to another question related to the patients. So FH Europe Foundation works closely with other organizations such as the European Atherosclerosis Society, FH Studies Collaboration, and many national patient groups. How do you think these partnerships help accelerate progress in FH detection and treatment?
Collaboration with scientific organizations like the European Atherosclerosis Society and the Global Registry has been fundamental. These partnerships allow us to align scientific evidence with patient experience or lived experience and then translate it into policy outcomes. I think we have over the years now developed certain capabilities which are allowing us to partner with scientific organizations and really be at the same table and as well to be taken seriously. So it's a partnership in its true meaning. It's not just us taking the information from the scientific communities and then trying to translate it, but also co-creating, co-designing. And so, I'm proud to say that in the last 6 years with the president of EAS, we have gotten to the point where we are now sharing the stage, whether it is EAS Congress or the European Parliament. And so that collaboration, that partnership sends a very strong message to different stakeholders that we work together, we know what we talk about, and what we ask for is very serious and cannot be dismissed. So I do value those collaborations, and I think and hope that over the years, with the new generation of researchers and clinicians, we can even improve it and make it really embodied in our activities day to day.
Speaking of this, what role do you think European policymakers and healthcare systems play in improving screening and management in FH?
So, as mentioned previously, now we have the council conclusions, and maybe I'll take a second to explain to listeners what council conclusions are. Council conclusions is a document that brings member states, so 27 member states in the European Union, together to sign it. It's several pages long, and it's already a success if you can get a few lines dedicated to a specific topic. And in December of 2024, we actually, as a community, got literally 3 sentences dedicated to the commitment to not only FH, but also elevated Lp(a), recognizing those lipid disorders as CVD risk factors and the fact that they need to be diagnosed earlier. So it's extremely important achievement, even if it's just 3 lines, because those 3 lines then led to the Safe Hearts Plan. As I mentioned, it's a big political document where now, for a change, we have a full page dedicated to specifically FH and elevated Lp(a), early screening and diagnosis. What that really means is that among all the other CVDs, those 2 specific lipid disorders have gained the visibility and commitment from the politicians. With that comes potentially the funding for implementation. With that comes a certain guidance to the member states to no longer dismiss it. So this is a very unique and timely opportunity to leverage guidelines, to leverage consensus papers, all the evidence that comes from research, and say, okay, now it's time to either implement earlier screening, better detection, better management. It's a vital collaboration. It's a vital relationship if we truly want to move the needle for people living with FH or elevated Lp(a), HoFH, and even FCS, and really improve their lives. So societies like EAS cannot go without collaborating with policymakers. Policymakers will never have all the knowledge that is necessary to make the right decisions. And organizations like FH Europe Foundation is a platform and a convener that helps connect those 2 worlds.
Great. You mentioned Lp(a), and really we know that the FH Europe Foundation has become increasingly active in raising awareness about other inherited lipid condition, and particularly lipoprotein Lp(a). We also know that the Lp(a) International Task Force has brought together scientists, clinicians, and patient advocacies to push for greater awareness and testing. And could you tell us how this initiative first came about? What prompted the creation of this task force, and what role did the FH Europe Foundation play in bringing it together?
So I think it was in 2022, after the successes we have managed to achieve in the FH pediatric screening space, demonstrating that FH Europe Foundation took the existing evidence from FH pediatric screening models from different countries like the Netherlands, Slovenia, Czech Republic, Austria, and bring it to the European Commission. And that yield a very tangible result, which is called Best Practice in FH Pediatric Screening, which is again a political recognition of the highest political organization in Europe. I think that has been very well noted by the wider community because it allowed us to host high-level, both technical and political meetings under the auspices of different governments and different countries. So first Slovenia, then Czech Republic, and that then led to to 3 publications, including the Prague Declaration on FH. It has led to an important breakthrough where wider community noticed that the patient organization and advocacy group can lead really progress in FH. And with that came inquiries from external stakeholders if we would be able to build on this experience and really set up a dedicated platform for elevated Lp(a). And it came roughly at the same time when the consensus on Lp(a) was published. And obviously, the name of Professor Kronenberg came very much came to the forefront. And so we were very, very privileged to get support of leading scientists, researchers, clinicians, but also other stakeholders in the space of ethics, innovation, policy, advocacy, health economics, and build this group as an independent group, which set itself 6 goals. And among them was raising awareness. And second was establishing for the first time a cost-effectiveness study for testing for Lp(a) in primary prevention. And we took that risk that regardless of the outcomes of the study, we would publish. Whether cost-effective or not, we would be very honest with our community and we would share the outcomes. The outcomes, to our surprise, came very positively, and it is not only cost-effective, but also there is a return on investment when we test for Lp(a). And so now, with Brussels Declaration, the first global Lp(a) summit behind us, and again, with the Safe Hearts Plan mentioning Lp(a), it's a very strong position to be in and build the next actions and objectives for the task force.
We've talked about the past. I would like to ask you something regarding the future. What do you think are the most important priorities for the FH community in the next 5 to 10 years?
We live in such an unpredictable world. Setting ourselves objectives beyond 5 years is really, really ambitious. So I would like to keep it maybe a little bit sort of shorter term. There are the ambitions and goals, but there's also the reality. I think I would like to start with the fact that patient organizations, on the contrary to societies or commercial organizations, are very, very vulnerable organizations. Unfortunately, they are very much stretched when it comes to resources, time, funding, and a lot of things depend on opportunities that might be coming our way despite our strategic approach. And that must be taken into consideration when we plan the next year, 2 years, or 5 years. I think with the achievements on the political stage, it is really vital with the national patient organizations and the ambassadors, as well as with EAS and its national members, to really comprehend that, at least at the European Union level, every country will be strongly encouraged to build national cardiovascular health plans. They might have slightly different names. They might be cardiovascular disease strategy, cardiovascular health strategy. Doesn't matter. What matters is that there will be a big push for every member state to have a dedicated cardiovascular health plan. And with that, we absolutely need to unite in every country, societies, patient organizations, to ensure that what has been done on the European level is translated on the national level. So dedicated attention as well as funding resources to make early screening detection a reality. With that must go absolutely commitment to support of newly diagnosed patients and their families, access to therapies, continuous safety of access, and growing that patient voice to ensure that the process is really going towards prevention. It will take us decades before we move from secondary prevention and reactive to truly early personalized prevention. But we have now, today, this window of opportunity to build the future for the next 5 and 10 years that you asked me about, Svetlana. That said, I think with the new therapies coming on the market, we have an opportunity as well to tackle and support people living with elevated LDL in the next few years. And I would like to take this opportunity as well to mention to everyone that in Europe, there is huge push towards recognizing better rare diseases. So huge progress, hopefully, for people living with HoFH and FCS, while new medications are being developed. So now it's really central to ensure that everyone, regardless of where they are, have access to therapies, and not just any therapy, but the right therapy for the right person at the right time. So the next 5 years, challenging, stretched, but at the same time very promising and important for all of us to collaborate and capitalize on all the developments that have come in the past few years.
I was going to ask you about developments in research or treatment that give you most hope right now, but you've already mentioned several that are on the pipeline. Is there anything else you'd like to add to this?
I think if there are young clinicians and researchers listening to this podcast, it's about now really ensuring, as I said, that we have personalized diagnosis and more personalized pathways to care. It's about recognizing the importance of therapies together with lifestyle and management. It's a general management. And I think my call would be not so much just about the development of new therapies, but about ensuring that people get access to those therapies in a way that helps them manage their CVD risk factor, or if it's already developed, CVD in the best way. It's not only about the length of life, the years we add, but also quality of life. And I think we shall never forget about the aspect of quality of life. So yeah, new therapies are coming, but they need to be available and they need to really prevent CVD and improve lives of people living with those conditions.
Thanks. And one more career question, please. We know that before joining FH Europe Foundation, you worked in drug development organizations, patient advocacy initiatives, and even the pharmacy industry. How have these different experiences shaped your approach to leadership?
It's a very tough question. I think having worked in different roles in the past helped me appreciate the wealth of stakeholders and different roles play in the wider health delivery ecosystem. And each and every role gave me certain lessons that I was able to bring to FH Europe. When it comes to leadership, there's a huge difference between my past experiences and my current experience. Here, everything is truly about people, patients, families. And I think my role as a CEO is to collaborate with different stakeholders and give a strategic direction while sharing that power and give more visibility and more decision-making, more space to contribute to patient organizations, leaders, and individual patients. So it's not about the CEO, it's about the community. And I think this is the biggest difference and maybe the biggest learning. And that's why it's so very important for me to strengthen our community so it can keep on going on a European but also national level in every country, every town, every hospital. It's about sharing that power of advocacy.
Thank you very much, Magdalena. One last question, perhaps another tough one. Looking back at your work in patient advocacy and healthcare partnerships, was there a strategy or initiative that you were convinced would work but didn't? And what did that failure teach you about leading change in the health ecosystem?
There have been a lot of successes and a lot of moments of learning. I will never ever look back and say that something was a failure or didn't work. I think it's a continuous process of trying and translating failure into learning. And I think it's extremely important that this helps us propel action and motivates us to get up and try again. Because if we see anything as a failure, it can be really demotivating. So I would like to say that perhaps there were some things that didn't work, but I don't see them as failures. I see them as opportunities to reflect, improve, get better, and get motivated.
Great. Magdalena, thank you very much for sharing your insights. Your work highlights the importance of collaboration, awareness, and early diagnosis in improving the lives of people living with FH. It has been a pleasure speaking with you today. And for all our listeners, we would like to remind them that next European Atherosclerotic Society Congress is coming up in May. So register now to join us in Athens, 24-27 May 2026. See you in Athens.